I'm excited about today's reading. It's only 2.5 pages long, but I got so much out of it, and I actually had a piece of healing that I needed from when I was 14, 15 years old. So yeah, it's just ironic how God keeps bringing up these moments of healing that I need to do so that I can, I guess, do it and share it, in the moment. So how are you guys feeling? Feeling all right today? Today we're actually going to talk a lot about shame, the difference between guilt and shame. Doing all right? So we're going to talk about guilt and shame and the perversion of one flesh. So the perversion of relationships when it comes to being abused. All right, so I'm going to pray. God, thank you for this time together. I ask you to just calm our minds and calm us inside. Lord, just help us to be able to just be present in this moment, to be present with you, to be present with our thoughts, and help us to learn, give us ears to hear, to learn how to overcome guilt and shame that stem from either being abused or from us ourselves, Lord, and help us to be able to distinguish the difference between those. I pray in Jesus' name, amen. Okay. So abuse as a perversion or an alteration, right, of the image of God. Abuse is invariably about the abuse of power over another individual. So power and control, right? So any abuse, doesn't matter what kind it is, it's always about power and control. An abuse that perverts or alters the divinely ordained image of God. In the next few pages, we'll define 5 different kinds of abuse and describe how they are a perversion of the image of God. One of them is sexual abuse, which is a perversion of one flesh, which is what we're going to talk about today. And then there's physical abuse, which is a perversion of let them rule. Then there's neglect abuse, which is a perversion of cultivate the ground. And spiritual abuse, which is a perversion of image. And verbal abuse, which is a perversion of be fruitful. So today's sexual abuse, a perversion of one flesh. A teacher recently told me, I'm going to give trigger warning here. Reading this made me kind of uncomfortable just because there's a lot of sex being mentioned. So I just want to give you a heads up, it might be a little bit uncomfortable to listen to, but it's really important for us to be able to work through stuff that we've gone through. All right, so a teacher recently told me about a call she had received from a woman in her Sunday school class seeking advice on a moral dilemma. She and her husband frequently traveled with their 3 adolescent children. When I looked up adolescent, they say it's ages 10 to 19. As do most families on a limited budget, they shared a hotel room when they traveled. Her dilemma? Her husband, an active member of a vibrant evangelical church known for solid Bible exposition, was pressuring her to have sex with him in the motel room with their 3 children in other beds a few feet away. He reasoned that the Bible nowhere prohibited this, so she was obligated to comply with his demand. Apparently, this man did not realize, or he didn't care, that by deliberately exposing his children to these acts, he could be prosecuted by the state for child SA, and he could damage his children. SA is the exploitation of a minor for the gratification of another person through contact and interaction. Abusive sexual contact can be described on a descending continuum and includes, I'm not going to say all the things, most of them we know, but I wanted to point out some of them that people may think is not abuse. So attempted, I'm just saying, intercourse, okay? Hopefully these words are okay for TikTok. But it's attempted, right? So it was never followed through. It did not go through. However, it was attempted. That's still a violation, right? Intentional touching of buttocks or thighs. Again, a violation. If you don't want it happening, it's a violation. That's sensual. Touching over clothing. Just because you're clothed doesn't mean that it's not abuse. Being made to watch something, whether on a TV or in person, you didn't have any activity within it, but you had to watch it, that is also a violation and sexual abuse. This graphic description is necessary because many people mistakenly believe that SA must involve going all of the way, or at least contact. Furthermore, even when people accept that sexual abuse encompasses a broad range of behaviors, they often assume that only abuse involving going all of the way creates severe damage. On the contrary, all SA is extremely damaging. Diana Russell, one of America's foremost authorities on SA, found that in the cases of the least severe forms of SA, like kissing, touching of the thighs, almost 20% of the abuse victims experienced extreme trauma. And in the next to least severe forms of sexual abuse, touching, etc., 35% of victims experienced extreme trauma. I've repeatedly witnessed the devastating effects of sexual abuse that did not involve going all the way. That's like I was saying the other day, we can't minimize just because you may have not gone through something as bad as somebody else. That doesn't mean it didn't affect you. So we can't judge, just like sin. We can't judge who did worse. Sin is sin, and abuse is abuse. Sexual abuse is incredibly damaging because as creatures made in God's image, sex is the most powerful bonding activity in which we can engage. God's intention is that in marriage, a man shall leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife and become one flesh. Genesis 2:24. Loving marital sex can powerfully bond But through abuse, it can just as powerfully wound. So there's the distortion, right? God meant it to powerfully bond a marriage together. And then the enemy came in and he started to abuse it and create powerful wounds within us. I often hear church leaders express great impatience with sexual abuse survivors who continue to experience the damaging effects of their abuse. They make remarks such as, "For crying out loud, that happened years ago. Lots of girls get touched like that, get over it. How long is this woman going to nurse this abuse?" These kinds of ignorant and destructive comments completely ignore the biblical data. In 1 Corinthians 6:15-18, drawing on the bonding imagery of Genesis 1 and 2, Paul declares that the sex act is unlike any act we commit. When we sin sexually, or by implication are sinned against sexually, it forms a unique bonding, which creates damage that goes beyond anything else we can do with our body. As Paul concludes in 1 Corinthians 6:18, flee immorality. Every other sin that a man commits is outside the body, but the immoral man sins against his own body. I never really grasped what that scripture meant until last night when I was reading this. When you think about most sin, it's outside the body, right? It's things that we do, it's in the environment. But when we are with people in a sexual way, that is affecting us within, right? Because God created it to bring us into being one flesh. And so that affects us greater than, doing something. And on the outside, I can't even think of anything right now. There's so many things, right? But yeah, that was amazing to actually see that come together last night, because there's so many times I'm like, I really don't understand what sinning against your own body is. And that's why people talk about soul ties, like once we're saved, right? Like that, because like with me, I was with a lot of different people in my past, and I formed a bond with each and every one of them. And so I did do a lot of praying in my walk with God, of like breaking connections that I had with people that I was with in the past. Sexual relations are to be a beautiful, divine gift that expresses unconditional love and should be a source of emotional and even physical life. So this sexual relationship, right? God created it to bond us together, and he meant for out of that there would be a source of emotional and physical life. Sexual abuse grotesquely distorts the relational aspect of the image of God and the divine plan for sexuality. With sexual abuse, sex no longer gives life but destroys life. With sexual abuse, sex does not express selfless love, but destructive selfishness. As a result, sexual abuse survivors struggle to accept their own sexuality and their own bodies. They also struggle in marriage to enjoy sanctified marriage. Women who have been abused often can't admit to being enjoyed or desired by a godly man. That made me think of, like, in my past, I always ended up with abusive men, right? And I was drawn to that, right, because of how I felt about myself. And I was broken. We're drawn to broken, right? We feel like we'd be accepted by somebody who's broken. And there was a couple of men who actually seemed like good men that I had dated. And once they started to actually fall in love with me, I broke up with them. I now No, and as I think back, I did not feel like I was good enough for them. I did not feel worthy of their love. I wasn't the same as them. Therefore, I pushed them away, and I kept bringing in what I was used to. So it's hard for us to be desired, to see ourselves as desired by good men or godly men. Sexual abuse is a sad perversion of the one flesh relationship. Okay, that was the end of it. Okay, so that's the end of the essay 1. Yeah, well, you're not alone, girlfriend. We all experience that if we've gone through this stuff. All right, so now to all my notes. Okay. So I had looked up the definition of pervert. I do that a lot. I'll look up definitions because a lot of times there's stuff in there that really, make it hit home. So the definition is alter something from its original course. So like Adam and Eve's sin, turning from God, right? The original course was that they would be walking with God and they would be provided for. They would live this amazing life. And all of that was altered when they decided to listen to the enemy and turn to him and away from God. Abuse perverts or alters our view or perception of who God is. Perversion of, so we're talking about the perversion of one flesh. So, So I had noted that sex was meant to powerfully bond us, and abuse perverts that and wounds us instead. And then I started thinking about oxytocin. I think I had brought this up in the past with you guys, and I researched sex and marriage and all that, like hardcore when I got saved because of how impure I was. And God even created the body, right, to act in a way to bring us together as one flesh, right? Or to even, it's not just about marriage, right? Say friendships. Oxytocin is a hormone that is released through touch. So it could be hugging a friend, right? When we hug a friend, when you really hug a friend, like Caitlin, you're a good hugger, right? You do that long hug, and there's times you've, held me there, and I've never been comfortable with that, right? Touch, like to hold for a long time feels intimate. So we do these quick, like bogus side hugs and stuff, right? That's because of what we've experienced. But God meant for us to have those nice long hugs because that alone starts to release that oxytocin. And that makes us feel good, and it makes us feel close to somebody. And it gives us a sense of trust, like we can trust. It's telling our bodies and our souls, our hearts, it's telling us that we can trust this person. So when you think about sexual abuse, and that touch is not wanted, and that touch is not good, but yet when it's happening, that oxytocin is still being released, right? So the oxytocin is telling us, I can trust this person and I can feel good with this person, but then you're actually in a position where it doesn't feel good and you can't trust it and you don't want that. So it's like confusion going on within us, right? And it's distorting everything about relationship. So that then distorts also our knowledge on who we can trust. Sorry, something just popped up and went away. All right. God is relational and created us to be relational. SA, distorted or perverted or altered the original plan of healthy, close relationships. Friendship to marriage. All right, so back now to that story. So God took me into some healing with reading this. Good morning, Michelle. Hope you're doing well. Did you just get in here, Michelle? Okay. Well, we read a little bit of the book. We are, let me see if I can summarize. So basically, we're talking about the perversion or alteration of one flesh. So basically relationships and how God created us. Well, okay, so for a marriage relationship, right, and sex, God created that to bond a husband and wife together, right? And then we also, then the enemy comes in, right, through sexual abuse, and he distorts that beautiful picture of bonding a couple powerfully together, right? And he distorts that closeness through the abuse. So then I was talking about oxytocin is a hormone that's released within us through touch. And God created that way because that's what bonds the couple together. It's a hormone that tells us we can trust, right? It gives us a sense of trust for this person. It brings us close. So even friendship can release this oxytocin, which makes us feel good, and the trust and whatnot. So hugging a friend releases this, and it's all meant for us to have, because God's a relational God, to have this beautiful relationship with one another, to be able to trust one another. And so the enemy came in and he distorted all of that, right? And that also then creates distance, right? Because we're hesitant to be around people even sometimes, right? So being around people can even be an issue. We isolate. All of that is against God's image and his what he meant for relationship. Hi.
Sorry.
Where are you going?
I'm just at Starbucks.
You're going to Starbucks? Come say hi. Caitlin and Kristen and Michelle are on. This is my daughter, Heaven.
Looks so white.
All right. Caitlin says good morning. Michelle says good morning. Kristen says good morning. All right. Okay, so to the piece that God used with me. So that story in the beginning, right? There was, so the dad wanted to have sex with his wife in the same room with his children, okay? I was at a friend's house. I was probably like 14, 15 years old. I was there to watch a movie. So we're in the living room watching the movie, and her siblings are there too, and then her parents are on the couch. And all of a sudden, he wanted her to sleep with him right there on the couch, right behind us. And I remember her resisting, and I remember him insisting, and they did. And I hadn't thought about that in a very long time. And when I thought about it, I was like, I'm embarrassed. I'm literally embarrassed to even tell this story. And I was like, okay, why am I embarrassed? And then shame, false shame, or shame, right? False shame came to my mind. So false shame or toxic shame is a feeling that you are unworthy of love, defective, or flawed. These messages become an identity, okay? So guilt, right? Guilt is a good thing that God created, right? It's to make us feel like, oh, we did something wrong. We are told by God, you come to me, you ask for forgiveness, and he lifts that guilt off of us, right? That's what his grace and mercy are for, because we do things wrong, right? So we have this guilt, we ask God for forgiveness. I'm sorry that I did this, and repentance. We try not to do it anymore in the future. However, shame is an identity, right? So we can create shame by not releasing guilt, right? Like if we keep holding on to all this guilt and we just keep piling it over the years, right? It can become an identity because we keep going over the messages of how we've done bad stuff. We participated in bad things. And so that can then turn into shame and create our identity of what we really believe about ourselves. So guilt is about what we do. It's our action or a behavior, right? Shame is about who we are. You didn't do something bad. You are bad, right? So that's shame. And the more often we hear messages or experience certain things, the more we believe it, right, about ourselves. So Satan created abuse, which causes shame, right? So I was embarrassed, which would be a self-focus, right? Being embarrassed means like you did something that would be embarrassing, right? I was not part of that. I did not go there asking for that. I didn't go there for that. I didn't participate. I acted like it wasn't happening because I was scared. And then I remember I never went there again. So in no way, shape, or form was this something to do with me. This was not something that I should be embarrassed about or feel shameful about because I didn't do it, right? So I recognized that last night, and then I told God, I said, you know what? I said, I don't want it. I don't want to feel embarrassed over this. I don't want to feel shame over this. I'm not taking that on from him. So he's the one that should feel disgusting, not me, right? So I told God, give it back to him. Here, God, take it. I don't want it. And today, telling you this story, I don't feel embarrassed. I don't feel shameful. It's literally as simple as that, you guys. When things come up in your mind, you ask God to help you lead you through these things. And in the beginning, it may feel a lot more chaotic and crazy, but as you do it, it becomes easier. Like last night was literally probably 5 minutes long. It's like, oh, okay, that came to my mind. It was triggered by reading this, right? How did I feel back then? Oh, I was embarrassed and I felt kind of disgusting about myself. Well, why? Did I do anything? No, I didn't do anything. So you got to put it in perspective. Okay, so that disgusting feeling and that shame isn't mine, but I took it on. Like I was bad. Something was bad about me, right? And the more this happens to us too, the more the enemy brings that into our lives. I was thinking that was the fifth guy, and I didn't think of that as sexual abuse either. So now I've added on another one, right? So that's 5 men from the age of 5 through 15 or so that something like this has happened. And what do you think that's going to tell us? Like, I'm the common denominator, right? But again, we got to put ourselves back into the truth. Like, did I ask for these things to happen? Did I cause these? No, I did not. In my situations, in all those things that happen, I never caused any of it. I never asked for it. I never wanted it. So again, it's a spiritual battle, right? God created this beautiful, beautiful picture of how we were to live and what we were to receive and how all the good things. And then the enemy came in and he distorted all of that. So like, we're built for that close, intimate relationship with one another. He came in and he distorted it in so many different ways, and made it to where so many of us are afraid to talk to people. We're afraid to open up and share who we really are. We're afraid to share the struggles that we have and the things that we've been through, but all that does is that keeps us locked into that shame. And it makes it to where others feel alone, and like there's no hope, that they can't get out, right? So as we heal these things, we become bolder. Like, I'm bolder. I can share these things with you because I don't carry shame over it anymore, right? These situations happened to me. They were not because of me, So again, shame is a focus on self. Guilt is a focus on behavior. One of the symptoms of shame is perfectionism. That, if you've seen any of my videos in the past, I have talked about perfectionism and how I struggled with that big time. God actually just recently, I'd say within the past 6 months, really did another major work within that area with me. I mean, perfectionism, right? Of like, I gotta have all the stuff done. I gotta have it all done perfectly. I've gotta have all the answers. Like, even down to cleaning my house, I was like, knickknacks aligned, getting level, like, are they in the right spot? Like, it was such a huge thing, right? Perfectionism. So what that is we're setting standards for ourselves that we can't meet. Okay, so we're expecting a lot of ourselves. So really, it's kind of like self-sabotage, right? Yes. Yeah, I mean, it could have been a mild form of that, but still, again, right? Like I've said, I think I said before, I think a lot of these labels that the world comes up with for us really stem from stuff like this, okay? So if you went through sexual abuse and you struggle with perfectionism, which also can come down to like me making sure my knickknacks are in the right place and stuff, that was a symptom of the sexual abuse I went through. I wouldn't want to be labeled and put on medication for it. You know what I'm saying? So I know there's more severe, I know I've known people with OCD and there's some very severe forms of it, but I still feel like it stemmed from something. I believe that people can come out of that if they do healing, of what they've gone through. So we set these standards for ourselves that we can't meet, which in turn continues the message of I'll never measure up, causing more shame. So we self-sabotage, right? We set ourselves up for sabotage. We want to keep, when you believe you're not good enough, for some reason, we keep feeding that message to ourselves, right? By the people that we're around or by the expectations we have for ourselves, and we set ourselves up for failure. And that's why God died for us, right? Because we're not perfect. And so he knew that we needed his help. And that's why he gave us the option of saying, God, I messed up. Like I did something messed up. I'm sorry about that. I agree that it is not something that I should have done. And I ask you to, take the guilt from me, forgive me. And then he takes it so that it's not sitting there accumulating, creating shame, creating your identity, which you're supposed to be finding in him, right? So like in childhood, I took on the job of making my mom happy, which I couldn't always do, right? There was a lot of times I could not make my mom happy, which affirmed again the message that I was a failure. So I shouldn't have been in that position to take on that job, but I was, and I did take it on, and that's how I lived a lot of my life growing up, and then like even my adult life, like make other people happy, right? A people pleaser. And then again, that's setting us up for failure because it's impossible. I cannot fully please Kristen, Caitlin, and my daughter in every way. You know what I'm saying? Like, we all do things differently. We all have different opinions on things. It's impossible. We will wear ourselves out completely and exhaust ourselves if we try to please everybody, right? So again, that's kind of like, I created shame, an identity, a message within myself by taking on the job of making sure everybody around me was happy, and then I failed at it. So, to end this, we need to ask God to help us see the truth in the moment. So when moments come up to you, right? If something comes up, like with me, like a memory came up, right? It was triggered. Stop and get with God, Why am I having this memory come up? He's going to help you. He's going to lead you, but don't ignore it. That's the number one thing, is recognize what's going on with you. Or you start to feel anxiety, right? Recognize that you're having that. Why am I having that? Is it something going on right now? Is it something that was triggered by something going on? That you're having that. Why am I having that? Is it something going on right now? Is it something that was triggered by something going on? And you have to work through the process, right? So you ask God to help you see the truth in those moments. So like for that moment with that guy that came up, I saw the truth that I was not part of that whatsoever, yet I took on the embarrassment and the feeling of being disgusting, those are his feelings. Those are what he should be feeling. So that was the truth, that I should have never carried that, and that's not part of my identity. So see the truth in the moments in our past and determine if the guilt or shame is ours. If we can confess it, it's ours, right? If we can't confess it, it's not ours. And then we need to just give it to God and say, you know what, give it back to that guy. And I'll literally visually give it to God in his hand, right? And I'm like, here, you do with it what you will. I don't want it. It's not mine. So I'm telling myself the message, that's not mine. I'm not disgusting. I'm not unworthy. I'm not unlovable. So you have to, reverse everything that we learned and were molded through. But it's not that hard with God on our side, right? So what do you think? I think that was a lot easier than taking that little chunk seemed a lot easier than all the stuff we've been reading. I love cookies. Was that impactful? I think like back in the day when I had started like studying that stuff, yes. I was amazed. I was like, oh my gosh, like oxytocin even like threw me for a loop. It's like, who knew the body actually was created in this way to build these beautiful relationships, you know? And yeah, it's crazy. Did you? Did you make them? Did you make your chocolate chip cookies? I'm cold. Thank you, Michelle. I'm glad. It's okay. It's okay. Oh, yes. Let me see. There you go. Oh, look, guys, we have a special guest today. Her name is Caitlin.
Can you hear me?
I mean, you're low. I don't know if it's my phone, though, because I haven't been listening. Hold on. Okay. Can you guys hear Caitlin?
Yeah.
Are you close to your phone?
I'm as close, I think, as I can get.
Okay.
Is it
okay?
better?
Kristen said she can hear.
Okay, good. Okay. So hello.
Hello, Caitlin.
Good. I'm glad you can hear. Actually, that's perfect that you can hear. A couple of days ago, when Tabby was discussing, we were talking about being broken. There was a comment made about, does God break us, right? Mm-hmm. And I felt it so much that yesterday I tried to record a video for it, and that failed miserably. And so I ended up calling Tabby and Heaven, and we discussed it, and I felt that comment so deeply. And I believe the comment that was made. I understand where that comment was coming from. But I think it's really important for us to discuss that God's not breaking us. It's not God. It's not of God. It's not His will. And we have to remember that we live in a world of free will. And so it's the evil and the consequences of others or other things done to us, around us, upon us. So I actually, one moment. Yes, buddy. Okay, just one moment, okay? So that's one of my little ones. So that being said, when I had called them yesterday, I have some really good books over here that I'm going to share with you guys, and just some little bits from it that I think kind of solidify the fact that He's in the healing portion of us, and that when we're in the breaking, He's with us. That when we're experiencing the breaking, when we're experiencing the trauma or the pain or the trials that we're in, He's grieving with us. He is there with us. And then He leads us, and He's with us in the healing. So one of them, I'm going to go a little bit backwards than what I did last night, because I think maybe it'll make more sense. It made more sense when I went over it. So one of the books that actually me, Tabby, and Heaven were doing is called Starved. It's by Amy Seifert. I'm not promoting this book. I'll say that there is good that can come from it. She adds a lot of political stance in her books, political subjects, which I personally find not the most appropriate for the circumstances or topics that are being discussed. However, I do still feel that there is a good takeaway from the book. So I do feel that it's still worth the time to read. I still find benefit to it. So that being said, the book Starved On page 181, it starts with talking about breaking to become. It's towards the bottom. And in a synopsis of that discussion that she has, she's talking about breaking through a shell as a baby chick and watching the hard work that a baby chick makes to be able to break through the shell and how they have to absolutely destroy that shell that was protecting them, right? And then when they emerge from that shell, they are able to nourish themselves. They are able to grow into what they are supposed to become, their purpose, which is a chicken. And so she talks about, it's brutal for the end of the shell, and it takes, her away from the home that she felt comfort in. However, if she stays in that shell, if that little chick stays in there, the chick will die because there was no breakthrough, there was no growth. And the chick was not able to release themselves from that. Carrying on through 182, not going to share it. It's a political stance she kind of brings in for that one. However, on page 183, she brings up, she still talks about the shell. She says, let yourself crack the shell and see who you become outside of it. Then she goes on to say, which I think that this is really impactful. She says, after all, isn't this the kind of breaking Jesus modeled for us? Jesus broke the rules on the Sabbath. Jesus broke the unspoken system of racism and sexism. Jesus broke the rule that a woman's testimony was not valid. Jesus broke the preconceived ideas of what it means to know God. Jesus broke social norms by having prostitutes at his table and cheaters over for dinner. Jesus broke well-oiled legalism. Jesus broke old ways of thinking and gave new thoughts. Jesus often said, "You've heard it said," and followed with, "But I tell you." It's part of the model of breaking to become. Jesus broke so much in order to build his kingdom. That's because breaking down is necessary for building up. And when we discuss his kingdom, it kind of goes back to the Lord's Prayer, right? And it's his will be done, his kingdom, right? And the discussion of how we're in flesh. So I'm trying to say this in a really simplified way. So we're human, right? And we are souls within human bodies. And in that embodiment, when we are broken and we go through the brokenness, we are healed here on earth, just like as an earth as in his kingdom. So when we are healed here on earth, our souls are also healed for his kingdom. So when it says his will be done, it's for the good of us in the fleshly also. It's not just for our salvation at the end. And he is there with us. Which brings me to there's this other book which I will absolutely recommend. It is exceptional. There's a Bible study for it. There's this book. There's a daily journal. Highly, highly recommend. It's Henry and Richard Blackberry, Claude V. King. They wrote this book. It's called Experiencing God, Knowing and Doing the Will of God. It is absolutely biblically driven. I can say that 100%. I have the Bible study. I'm working on that. I have the book, and I also have the devotional. None of it has made me question, and in fact, they pause you very often in the book and the Bible studies and the devotional. It will say, please pause, take this, absorb this, read scripture about it, verify it for yourself. What do you think about it? What are you taking from this? So I highly recommend it. I think it's great. In the introduction, there's a statement here that they have, and kind of following through with the Bible study. It says that God does not focus on giving people heartwarming devotional thoughts. He intends to save and radically transform lives. He does so all the time. And I find that to be true, to be really honest. Some of my personal experiences, I've had a husband die. I've had a child die. I have been through some very abusive situations, okay? And through all of that, I'm here sitting and talking to you 100% just feeling the love of God. I have been through circumstances that there was no way other than but God. And they weren't great circumstances. And it's not something cuddly to talk about. It's not, warm and loving. It was hard things. It was very hard things. And yet, still praise God. It's making me who I am today. It's made me a better person, a better mother, a better friend, a better Christian. It's making me a better follower of God, and having a better relationship with him and understanding. So with that, there's actually, when you keep going through the introduction, there was another one that came out, and I kind of thought of you guys. Really, it says, where are you? People can in many different places along their spiritual walk. I've noted below some of the ways you might describe your spiritual life. See if one or more of these descriptions matches your present relationship with God. So what they're discussing is like, where are you right now and your relationship with him? And when I thought about that question about God breaking us, I kind of thought, this really applies. And some of the examples they give is non-existent, exciting, discouraging, dynamic, sinful, plateaued, growing, powerful, contagious, embarrassing, in decline, miraculous, bewildered, hopeless, deepening, confused, victorious, defeated, joyful, and ashamed. And they go on to say, this book is unlike most that you will read, and that you want to question, what does God want to do in my life? And to ask God to accomplish his will in your life as you continue. So as you continue your relationship with God, no matter where you are right now, to ask him to strengthen that relationship with him. I think it's really important, especially if we're feeling that brokenness, right? Like, we're all here because we feel some form of brokenness, whether it's the SA part or physical, mental, emotional. We're here because we want healing, and we feel that. And so as we grow that relationship, I kind of just thought of that. And then, yeah.
Yeah, I think that obviously when Kristen mentioned that, made us think, all of us think. So maybe that's, something that we need to keep thinking about and asking God about. Because, yeah, like I said, when I first read that, I thought of the authoritative father figure, which would tell me that that's stemming from my past of like that mean dad, and that's what I think when I hear breaking, right? And then I still overthinking of it. I'm like, no, I don't see that God would break us. Like I already came to him broken. That's why I came to him, right? I was already broken. So he's been putting me back together, and he's been showing me, lies that I believed and bringing in the truth. He's been taking my worthlessness that I felt and giving me worth, so he's transforming and changing things. And maybe, there's times where he needs to maybe break us of our pride. So he'll do that by humbling us and putting, allowing us in a position of being humbled. But as far as breaking, I still don't grasp that that's what he does.
Yes, I agree with that. And we talked about that last night too. I think anything, it's more of a discipline. It's more of like when we are children, because we are children of God.
Right.
It's a form of discipline more than it is a form of a desire to break.
Mm-hmm.
The last part I had in with that, the last part I had in with that was that Bible verse. I actually pulled out just a second, guys. I actually pulled out the AMPU Bible just because I think for this, it would be way more easier to understand. The one I read last night was NKJV verse, which is a New King James version. But if you're not a fan of King James or the New King James, it's a little bit harder to grasp because of the verbiage that's used. So I did pull out the AMP Bible this morning. Hold on, I'm setting up Spider-Man for the little one here. So I will read that to you. If you would like to, if you have a Bible available and you'd like to read along your version, it's going to be 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 6 through 9. The whole chapter is great, actually. But the specific is going to be verse 6 through 9 on that. And if you'll give me just a moment here, I'm almost there. Oh, go down? Okay, 1 second. Oh, does it? Which one? You want this one with the dinosaur? Oh. Is it this one? You want the dinosaur?
No, it's the lizard.
It's the lizard.
Yeah.
We're trying to navigate Spider-Man. Sorry, guys.
It's all right.
This one? Yeah?
A lizard.
It might be a lizard. Okay, hold on. Okay. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So the first letter of Peter. So 1 Peter chapter 1, a living hope and pure. Let me start over. A living hope and a sure salvation. In this you rejoice greatly, even though for now, a little while, if necessary, you have been distressed by various trials, so that the genuineness of your faith, which is much more precious than gold, which is perishable, even through tested and purified by fire, may be found to result in your praise and glory and honor at the revelation of Jesus Christ. Though you have not seen him, you love him. And though you do not even see him now, you believe and trust in him, and you greatly rejoice and delight with inexpressible and glorious joy, receiving as the result, the outcome, the consummation of your faith, the salvation of your souls. So it's describing, I think that was way easier to understand. It's describing, no matter, there's no specific trial and there's no specific hardship that you're going to go through, and it's just like what Tabby's been describing in these what she just talked about today, even that there's no one is worse or more than the other, that we're all going to go through trials, we're all going to go through hardships and things, and at the end, like we discussed before shortly ago, it's the salvation of being with God and in his heaven and having the relationship with him. 1 second. This one? Here. Here you go. Okay. So, I just think that it's important to discuss and for us to share, like, especially because I felt that so much when it was said. It definitely impacted me, obviously, and I really pondered on it, and I really just felt that. And so I just wanted to share, like, it's not a brokenness of God. It's definitely a brokenness of Satan and the world that he creates, and the free will of people being able to choose to do evil to one another, which is, it's devastating and it's heartbreaking. And, you know, hearing you ladies are so brave, hearing the stories that you have shared, it is heartbreaking to hear it. You definitely feel that in that. So yeah, I just wanted to share those things, and I appreciate the patience with my little ones in the background.
Well, thank you for finding courage to come talk to us today, because I know this stuff is, it's tough, but going out of your comfort zone, right? That's how we grow.
Yes, definitely not my comfort zone.
Yeah, well, it wasn't mine either, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Yeah, going live. Actually, Kristen helped me a lot the first time I went live, probably a few weeks ago. She showed up. I was a total disaster, I felt like, and she kept the conversation going with like 96 comments. And I was like, see, I was like, that's a picture of the church, right? Like I said, well, I feel like I sense God's telling me you need to take this step and go live. I didn't know yet what I was exactly going to talk about. But I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to take this step, and I'm just so terrified. And so I was like, forget it. I just got to do it, right? And so then I put out a video. I'm going to do it this time, this day. And then Kristen showed up. I don't think we even talked to each other at that point at all. And yeah, she kept me going. So I would have probably bailed if Kristen didn't show up. But that is how God uses us for one another, right? We're supposed to be there to encourage and help each other to grow. And so she helped me carry that burden of going live. Now I'm getting a lot more comfortable with it, so that's nice. All right, so I want to end with a scripture that actually came to mind again while Caitlin was talking about that stuff. It's Hebrews 12:2. I'm also using AMP. Looking away from all that will distract us and focusing our eyes on Jesus, who is the author and perfecter of our faith, the first incentive for our belief, and the one who brings our faith to maturity, who for the joy of accomplishing the goal set before him endured the cross, disregarding the shame of the cross, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God, revealing his deity, his authority, and the completion of his work. I had read this last night, and that part, disregarding the shame, right? So when you were executed in that way, right, that was them saying, you not only did you do something bad, but you are bad, right? You are bad, and therefore your life is nothing, and we're actually just gonna, get rid of you. And he didn't do anything wrong, right? So it made me feel closer to him in that aspect, that he gets it. He understands. He didn't do anything wrong, yet he was found to be guilty, and he was shamed, right? So they were trying to put that identity on him, that he was a bad man. And it says he disregarded that. So he threw that message out, because he's like, I know I'm not a bad man. I know what I'm doing right now. And so he gets it, that the enemy, because that was literally Satan, putting all that together to get him taken care of. So, he gets it. He knows that we've experienced these things. He knows, and he cries about it, and he weeps with us, and he wants to take that from us and heal us. He wants to help us to disregard the shame or the false messages that we have believed about ourselves and who we are, so that we can then have that. There's another scripture, to be cleaned. Let us approach God with a true and sincere heart in unqualified assurance of faith, having had our hearts sprinkled clean from an evil conscience. So guilt, right? Sprinkled clean from guilt, and our bodies washed with pure water. He wants to purify us, make us to where we feel clean and we feel forgiven, right? So he wants to, that's the whole goal, is to take all of this from us so that we don't suffer, and we can go to him with our guilt and have that forgiven, and we can go to him with false guilt and shame, and we can have him take us through that process of releasing that so that we can be set free. That's all I got, guys. Anybody want to say anything? You guys doing okay? Again, I'm going to throw out there, if you ever want to talk, you just need somebody to listen or whatever, I am here, I'm willing. I understand this stuff can be heavy and pretty painful in the moment. Yes, he definitely works everything for our good. I mean, look at this, like, right? We go through these horrible situations, right? And then the enemy meant that for harm. He wanted to take us down and destroy us, and he doesn't want God using us, and right? And then God comes in and he starts to heal all that. And then look, I'm talking about abuse. I went through abuse. God redeemed it, and now I'm here able to talk to others about it, you know? So yes, he definitely uses it for our good. And yes, go to God with everything for sure. All right, you guys. So again, reach out if you need help. I know it's hard. We feel like burdens. It's okay. You're not a burden, and I'm here. Thank you, Caitlin. I thought it was great too. And if you don't know, I've been putting these videos on YouTube. It's the links on my page, because there's somebody, at least one person, Jenny. So that's another person that's doing this along with us, but she's at work, so she's doing it alone at night. So I've been putting them up there in case you guys want to share it, or you need to listen again, or there was something you missed. You can go ahead and look at that. Derek Prince has a video on YouTube called Overcoming Guilt, Shame, and Rejection, does he? That is very good to know. Thank you. All right, so tomorrow we are going to talk about physical abuse, a perversion of let them rule. Yes, thank you for sharing that, Kristen. All right, so I just pray that you guys have a good rest of the day, even if that means that you're sitting in tears and you're grieving and you're spending time with God and you're allowing him to heal. That is good too. A good day doesn't mean we have to be smiling and running around the world spreading joy, right? A good day means we are doing something to benefit ourselves and our lives. All right, I will see you guys tomorrow morning. Have a good day. Bye. You too.